Well, good evening. We're going to go ahead and move towards getting started here tonight. If the sound's funny, just let me know and we'll turn it down. I have a hot mic, I think, but that's good. So tonight begins the ending of our series. So we have 3 starting tonight. So tonight we're going to hear from Reverend Caleb Haynes. We'll tell you a little bit about him in a second. Next week, our guest is Pastor Hunter. So he's going to talk about John Wesley's works of mercy and murals. So hopefully that piques your interest just a little bit and you'll come back. And then in 2 weeks, an old college friend of mine, Dr. Stan Wilson, will come and talk about spiritual formation and his experience with he and his wife Cheryl filming the Chosen series over the last few seasons. So they will have just wrapped up season 6. So he's going to come and talk about spiritual formation and working on that show as well. So that's what's coming up. So be here the next few weeks. You're going to enjoy it. So tonight we have Reverend Caleb Haynes back with us again, the Director of Nazarene for Creation Care. He has lots of information on the back table.
So much information.
Including a couple books. He still has a couple of books. One has been sold already tonight. They're only $10. So. Venmo, cash, whatever. So, and you have a Creation Summit, coming up that we'll probably ask you about in October in Kansas City. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But if you remember last year, Caleb joined us, talked about his book, Garbage Theology, which is back there, and how his experience as a trash man, essentially, led to looking at the way that we as a society do things, especially as Christians, how we treat the planet and our environment and what's around us. So what I've asked him tonight is it's kind of wide open. So definitely, if you have questions, raise your hand. I'll try to get a mic to you so people streaming or later on the recording can actually hear the question instead of a bunch of dead space. So raise your hand. We'll try to get to you. Interrupt at any point if you have a good question. Or even if you have a bad question, either way, it's going to be fun. But tonight I wanted to ask Caleb here to talk a bit about, once again, how we as Christians, especially as Nazarenes, who care greatly about both the people that we meet, whoever they are, wherever they are, and the planet that we live on. It's been in our history the entire time, how we care for those things and what it means to care for creation. And as Caleb mentions in his book, it is our original mission as human beings was to care for the garden, was to care for creation. That was what we were commanded to do and to walk with God in that. So we should look at it. We've talked a lot about new creation over the last couple of years with some of our guests, and that's what we're talking about here, new creation. How do we make sure that what God has given us is still here and is able to support us and sustain us? So I'm just going to turn it over. I know, and Caleb is working on a book that he said he has a deadline coming up, so he might mention a few things about what he's got thinking in his head there, and then I will definitely ask you about your summit coming up. But let's tell us a little bit about, especially the last year or so, I'd say it's probably become a little harder in the creation care space to get people to be interested in that.
Yeah. No, I'm so thankful to hang out with you guys again. And I made the classic mistake of just eating a bunch of popcorn right before I came up here to talk to you guys. So, and I also want to know if there's a lottery where I can get one of these shirts, because this shirt's it's like really doing it for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like we just took it up here, But so cool to hang out with you guys, and I hope that you guys will just spit fire questions, because I'm definitely up for that. And also, total caveat to say that I may completely repeat many things that I have said to you guys last year or not. So sorry, not sorry, but that's kind of what preachers do, right? We just repeat ourselves until everyone gets it. Until Jesus returns. So here we are. Yeah, it's no secret that we are living in a time, we are living in a place where environmentally, there's a lot of problems, to be really blunt. And and of course, I think that we have to name, quote unquote, the elephant in the room, right? That even what it means to be an American right now, there's a lot of protections that are being removed right now, which is really hard to see, as a Christian who, understands that our calling is to, quote unquote, Genesis 2:15, serve and protect, serve and keep, this garden that we call home, this planet Earth. And so, and obviously the best ways we can do that, hopefully, is to create local and regional and even, policies any way that we can. And so, it's been tough to kind of, I don't know if that's what you're alluding to or not, but it's been difficult to watch. And so what does it mean as the people of God to engage in these conversations and to dig deeper, literally and metaphysically, into the soil around us, and that when people see the church in the world, they see a group of people who are embodying hope and engaged in the work of environmental care. And I think that, I know that that's one of the reasons that so many, especially younger people, but older people as well, have and are leaving the church today, because there's climate change, there's so many things going on. It's like, where are the Christians? And in fact, it becomes quite the opposite sometimes, right? The Christians are the least engaged, or maybe even, I'm going to say, some of the ones not caring at all. And so, wow, like, is that really our story? Is that really? And it's not, is it? And so I love to have these kind of conversations. There's so much there, and there's so much opportunity there to engage in, and obviously it's very contextual depending on where you live and the environment around you, and your time and your bandwidth and your hobbies, and and I tell people all the time, what does it look like to engage in the work of earth care as you, whoever you are, with the things that bring you joy, because it's not about any one of us doing everything, right? It's about us just being us, who God has created me to be, in a way that is good for the earth, in a way that is good for my neighbor. And we find that. Sorry, I'm just ranting on. You released it and I went, but that there is no such thing as ecological well-being apart from human well-being. And or as Robin Wall Kimmerer would say, all flourishing is mutual. And so that's a big part of what I like to spend time talking about, and sort of pulling the curtain back to say, there's we create a lot of binaries, I think, in our culture, a lot of individualism, right? We're always talking about in the church. I think there's a lot of imagination to be had within Christian circles. What does it mean to include the rest of creation in this salvific love story that is our gospel? Because it's already included. We're just not including it in the way that we talk, in the way that we behave, the way that we go about our lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, and theologically, I think you touch on some things, I think, which is why it's important when we explain some of the theology we believe. Not that everyone else is wrong. We're not that kind of Christian or theology, but that often the times we talk about God or our world or the way we engage with one another is really important, because I would say that some of the reasons that Christians do not become interested in what goes on with the earth is there's been some weird theology that came out of the middle of the 20th century that essentially said this earth is going to burn up, and so what does it matter? Instead of, this is where we're living, this is what God gave us, let's take care of it. And I think that's where we come into why we as Wesleyans especially care deeply about the earth, because it also matters for the people on it. As you said, there's no flourishing. The earth and humanity are linked. We don't really have anywhere else to go, even though there are those that would wish we could, but there's just nowhere to go. This is where we live. This is the place that we have been put.
There's a lot of money being spent right now and energy and resources on trying to go somewhere else, which is kind of its own conversation. But yeah, a lot of interest in moon mining and space tourism, and and now there's even talk of trying to put solar panels in space to try to make more cleaner energy, so we can keep using AI more, because it's very energy intensive. And so it's just, we're really obsessed with space, which I think space is cool, but there's also, like, we may have watched Interstellar too many times. Like, we, I mean, it's a good movie, but we may have watched it too many times.
It can, that can give you some ideas. So, but I guess some of the things, and you talked about it last year, is, we've noticed, I noticed the other day, I put on a pair of shorts I hadn't had for that long, and we noticed a hole in them, so they became work shorts. But I liked wearing them out, but they had worn out very quickly. Now, I do wear them a lot, I'll say, but still, I still have a pair of, I think it's back at my mom's house, but I had a pair of Stan Smith Adidas shoes. I don't know if y'all remember those. They were just white with a little green Adidas, and one of my best friends had them. I had those for 10 years and could put them on, and they didn't wear out. I'm not saying they smelled good, but they fit, and they didn't wear out, and they didn't fall apart. But nowadays, we're often looking at things, and it is because I think partly our culture, partly the way that corporations need us to continue buying things, that those things must become obsolete.
Yeah. What does it look like to be a prophet today? Be like a John the Baptist sort of creation care person, just wearing these old tattered, it puts a different emphasis on holiness for Nazarenes. Are you with me? See what I did there? That's no charge. Yeah. No, I think that there is a lot, I think, like that. I don't know if that's where you're going and all. I just totally threw that in there. But when we think about, like, our covenant of Christian conduct and, these things that we've chosen are in there or are not in there. And there are many conversations. I know firsthand, it takes a lot to try to get something in there. And what is it? I think this sort of earth care conversation, right? So what does it mean? So this Creation Care Summit that we're planning for this October, 14th through 16th in Kansas City, you all should come. The subtext is holiness in all creation, right? So what does it mean to be a holiness people? What does it mean to be a Nazarene holiness people today? And what are the funny things, I'm going to say funny things, right, that are markers of that help us, not that we're trying to stand out, but that we know when we follow Jesus in the world, we look different. And so what are those? And I think that there is that, in a world where planned obsolescence, like you're saying, is baked into cheap goods and cheap appliances and all that. We're just swimming in it. What does it look like to be a little different? To be a people about repair, to be a people about, a different way, a secondhand way of living, we would say, or something like that. But I don't know if that's where you're going. But
no, I think that's important. And just, sometimes we think, like, Christian had an appliance a while back that broke, or it just quit doing what it was supposed to be doing. And she's like, well, shoot, we need to go look for another one. I said, no, wait a second. Let me look on YouTube. Let me find out. And guess what? I found out how to take it apart, how to replace the parts that were broken, and the thing still works. I channeled my inner Greg, in other words. So, yes, you all know, Greg is a perfect example of finding things, sometimes probably to a fault, but there are ways for us to extend the lives or extend the usefulness of things so that those things don't become trash in a landfill somewhere or don't end up just by the side of the road or rusting out somewhere. So I think it's important for us to think of those things. And you did mention the covenant of Christian conduct, which while we have an addendum still with creation care, there is in our preamble now, in the very first paragraphs of the Covenant of Christian Conduct that describes who we are, how we live as holiness people, there's some very explicit language about caring for creation, caring for our fellow human beings, working for justice across the world so that all people can flourish. That's in who we are. We claim that to be very important, those parts of our manual. And so we can gloss over that first section a lot, and we focus on some others a little too strong if we miss those, because those set up why some of the others may be important to us as Nazarenes. And I think that's why these kind of conversations are important, for us to know who we are, the kinds of things that we care about, and why those are important. And I mean, those of us that are a little older remember before we had some of these protections in place. Many of you probably remember the PSAs in the 70s of just picking up litter. And you had the Native American guy with the tear that would come down at the end. Yeah, I get seared in my consciousness, that picture. And then Tennessee Trash. Does anybody remember Tennessee Trash? Yeah, run over the byways and the highways, and he's just throwing the stuff out of the car and all that stuff. Those campaigns actually worked because people started caring about things started cleaning up. The Mississippi went from being muddy to rather bluish looking, grayish looking, and the Ohio turned bad, but whatever. But people cared about stuff, and those kinds of things mattered, and it has made a difference. And I think, like a lot of other things, it fades into history. The 70s are a pretty good long time ago now. And I think we've forgotten some of that as we get into trying to make sure that the old famous enhancing shareholder value thing hits, and most of us don't profit from any of that. So, how do we care about those things? How do we show examples of that within our own lives and within our church? What are the kinds of things we can do, and what are things we can do? I know, because it's very daunting when you think, well, we can't go out and make these big sweeping changes. We can't do certain things, but what can we do that may not seem to make a difference, but probably does?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it comes to our individual lives, I mean, everything that we do matters. And on one hand, I think people often feel very hopeless when it comes to environmental conversations because it just feels so big. But on the other hand, it should be kind of the most hopeful feeling work, because everything that you do matters, and that can't be overemphasized. And not just in everything that you do does, there is a carbon footprint. But I tell people all the time, just changing the way that you eat we're talking about, you do this. Well, if you're like me, you don't just do it 3 times a day. I'm like grazing constantly. I'm just eating as I'm stepping up here, and so our food just doesn't just come with a carbon footprint where and what that means of, like, it had to travel to us, where was it grown, but you're making choices about the kind of soil you're investing in, literally the kind of earth that you're choosing to support, the kind of agriculture you're choosing to support, and those ripples are big ripples. We eat constantly, and so thinking about altering these choices around how the things we're consuming, and I know it's a taboo thing, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Eating less meat, choosing to eat meat maybe just a couple times a week, just that small little change if you're a bigger meat eater, that has such a huge impact. So a couple years ago, I may have shared this already last time I came, I'm not sure, but they did a biomass study, okay? And what they found is they did a biomass study. They measured all the mass of all the mammals on planet Earth, okay? So hold this together in your brain. What they found was humans and our livestock. So humans were about 60%, okay? Plus our livestock, this is cows, like made up 96% of all the biomass of all mammals on planet Earth. Okay, if you're tracking what that means that there's only 4% of all mammals on planet Earth is everything else, okay? So think zebras, think dolphins, think badgers, think, platypus. Is that a mammal? I don't even know. No one really knows. All of it, 4%. We now know from 1970 to 2020, we lost 74% of all wildlife. We now know how much, we've all heard the stats on how much rainforests that we're losing. That's real. And most all of that, I'm just being real blunt, most all of that is due to the increasing demand for more livestock, especially beef. And so once you realize what a devastating force this diet is, this meat-centric diet, it is a huge. Of course they say if everyone lived like us, we would need I think it's like 4 more Earths here in the States. But if everyone just ate like us, and that's increasing to happen. And so that's one of the reasons that this is becoming more and more in our face. Just small little changes. I'll give you guys a really good resource. If you want to look it up online or on Instagram, it's called Fork Ranger, and this is the son of the district superintendent of the Netherlands, Nazarene. Okay, in the Netherlands, and he makes these videos and cookbooks. And it's just so good, and he gives all these great examples of how all of the ways that we eat matter. And the other things I'll say real quick too, I know that feels really small, it's just all of our little choices. I mean, you can see it's like falling apart. It's okay. I've had this water bottle maybe as long as my oldest child has been alive, maybe like 12 years, and I just bring it with me. How many cups do you think that I have not used? How many single-use cups do you think I have not used in a dozen years just carrying this around? Thousands, I eat all the time. It's like one of my main, so I keep a fork in my bag. How many forks, and this is not to shame. We've all used our share of disposable things for eternity, but but just to say wow, that adds up really fast in just a day and a week. And these are the little habits, These are little habits. Sure, maybe I've got a backpack with me everywhere I go, whatever. Or in the trunk of my car, I keep a kit that every time I go out to eat, I've got it there, And so these are such small little things that really can add up and embody hope. And so, but aside from all those little things, again, I just try to tell people man, find the thing that really brings you joy and figure out how that can be part of the good news for creation. And so,
because I think it can be something, something I've learned. I'm in tech. That's what I work in. AI is a huge thing. But what I learned about AI from the technical side is it uses a lot of power. A Google search uses a certain amount of power, just kind of average. AI uses hundreds of times of that just for a single search. Now, there are places where AI is very useful for people, and it actually does make some efficiencies. But there are places like the toys on Facebook when it makes you turn into a little action figure. That's all cool and fun, but you got to think about sometimes, is it really worth it to play with that toy to take the stuff? Now, I will say one fascinating thing for me as a child of the 70s is a renewed interest in nuclear energy. And while there's bad things about it, there are some good things in terms of, just gases that are expounded, but there's still nuclear waste. But as a kid, that was the big future of everything, and they're starting to look at those again. And we're even hearing words we heard back then that were scary, like 3 Mile Island. But we can see how something like that can drive the way that everything else is changed. There's been some arguments in our state over some power plants going in Memphis in places that are going to displace people in order to feed the AI computers. So those are things I think if we don't engage in it quite as much, it's not gonna, it may not matter, but it could matter. I mean, that one search or that one little toy that you do 3 or 4 times could make the difference in your neighborhood. Just something to keep in mind. I mean, I know that you've probably heard even more about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I think that is probably, I'm going to say, one of the hottest conversations, right now is artificial intelligence and somewhere around 6 months ago or so, you logged onto your phone and you swiped up, or maybe you got on Google, and all of a sudden you're not just getting your results, you're getting AI as well, right? And so we're actively thinking, what else can we put it in? Because companies are thinking, this is a selling point. We're going to make more efficiency, right? And obviously that can trickle down to all sorts of things, and there are people losing their jobs and all this other stuff. So there's a whole other conversation there. But just like any technology, right? Just like this microphone, it comes with a footprint, right? Every cell phone in this room has probably every bit of technology has copper, has cobalt, right? We know that cobalt probably comes, statistically, maybe it comes from a conflict area, from the Congo, that kind of thing. So we're generally familiar with, like, there's problems. AI is like that, but, kind of off the charts. If you ask AI just a simple question like, where do I get a really cool Hawaiian Yoda shirt? That question is going to cost you about a bottle's worth of water, for one, because these microchip facilities require copious amounts of water to keep the system cooling. It's another reason they want to put these things in space, because it's cold in space. So, but also energy, copious amounts of energy. And they're predicting at this rate, in a few years, we can need, they say, anywhere from 2 to 6 more Californias worth of new energy coming onto our grids, right? But that's already happening. Already in a lot of places, people's electric bills are just going up because we're just eating all this extra energy. And so there's a lot of problems there, but I think on the nose, and you mentioned it, is right here in our own state, in Memphis. They put in this facility. It's called Colossus, and it's touted to be the biggest. Right? Even as I'm saying it out loud, you're like, what are we talking about here? Is this dystopian? What is this, X-Men or something? It's called Colossus, and they've installed it. It's, Elon Musk company in Memphis, in one of the poorest black and brown communities in Memphis, and 35 methane turbines that produce nitrous oxide, copious amounts of nitrous oxide into the air, formaldehyde into the air. So we're talking heart disease. We're talking all sorts of. This is called environmental racism. That's what this is called. Okay. And you mentioned Mississippi River earlier. That's we also call that Cancer Alley, right? Because all these companies used to just dump into this river, right? The rivers, literally, these bodies of water caught on fire. That's one of the reasons we created the EPA. And anyway, so we're now seeing just so much superpower disregard. But man, what does it mean to be a church in a community where these things happen? Like, what does it mean to speak up and and stand in the gap for these people in these communities. And like we've definitely got to be doing that and standing in the gap and speaking up for these voices, communities, and these things. And so and that all comes down, right, to this little search engine, to this little chat GPT, which is crazy to think. I'm not saying it's not ever would be a helpful tool, but we're just asking it to create funny images for us most of the time, and we don't think about, man, that really has a big input footprint to it. And so there's a lot there, and I think that there's a whole nother discussion we could talk about around human obsolescence, which is if you're familiar with Wendell Berry decades ago wrote quite a bit. There he has a famous essay, you can find it in his book called What Are Humans For? But the title of the essay that was published in like a paper, and then a whole bunch of people wrote him back because they were upset about it. But the title of the essay is just Why I Am Not Going to Own a Computer. And this was in 1991 or something. And it's a whole conversation, right, around technological advancements and what are people for, and this whole sort of dance. But AI in particular. I think that it's something that we should be mindful of.
I just keep wondering if people haven't seen Terminator enough.
Yeah, right. We're just Terminator 2 all over again,
You were talking about these giant power plants for AI, and I just came from Georgia, and I was surprised to find that Georgia is one of the states leading in setting up these plants, and I wondered why. And the reason in Georgia is that they get tax write-offs. They are promised like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, no taxes at all.
Yeah.
And so, we have the opportunity as citizens to discuss that or present alternative viewpoint to our legislators, because it's this kind of legislation that is resulting in a lot of this.
Absolutely. I think as a Christian people, familiar with the Bible, our bells should be dinging, right, around what it means to be a people under the thumb of a time that's not so different than Jesus' days and Old Testament times in Babylon, Rome, right? When these systems are showing up in this way, and really stifling the voice of the people there. Yeah, sorry. Were there other ones, sir?
Any other?
Okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't know if we're passing it around or what we're doing.
Well, I mean, sometimes. Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of questions. They're just not asking them. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
You can't get away with not speaking to the mic.
Just do it. Yeah.
How do you become a green church? We've talked a lot about some individual things we can do, but what could we collectively as a congregation do?
Yes, that's a great question. So, one of my favorite talking points is we encourage churches to, as Nazarenes for Creation Care, we do an eco-church certification program. And this is something, we didn't invent this necessarily. There are lots of other denominations and worldwide organizations like Arasha that do this in the UK and other things. But the idea is that right now there are churches, Nazarene churches, in Washington, D.C., in Manchester, UK, in Malawi, in Boston area, who are Nazarene eco-churches. And what that means is that you've gotten with at least one other person in your congregation, you've gotten approval from staff to make a green team. You've signed a covenant, which we have one that you can sign, or you can create your own that just says this is why this is important to us, and that you begin making 3 changes with your congregation. And that could take however long it needs to take. And we have a whole list of different changes, things that you can try on with your congregation. And so I think that there, again, like what does our context look like as a church, or being out here in Hendersonville with your beautiful land. And one of the things I tell people is right now we're kind of in a pollinator crisis. Since last June of 2024, we've lost over 60% of American honeybees since last June. That's terrifying, right? 75% of the world's food has to have pollinators, okay? And I know there are lots of other different kind of pollinators, hummingbirds, bats even, right? But it's a rapid drop. Man, what would it look like? What would it look like for the church, for churches to spend a little less resources on lawn care and a little more resources planting native seeds, right? I mean, this is the low-hanging fruit, I feel like, of what it means to be a good steward of our facilities, right? And changing light bulbs out. There's a lot of things that you can just implement, and once you implement them, they're kind of there. They don't take a lot of care. And even some of the things that are more difficult, they can become habits. And before you know it, you don't even remember it being hard. It's just sort of the new way that you live. And so, I talk with people about even the cleaning products that we choose to use in our facilities, right? One of the things I just saw, and this was just I'm going to mention this at my own risk, but this was just an Instagram thing I saw that they just came back with research that said 100% of California wines that were tested all had glyphosate in them, okay? Glyphosate is a fancy word that it's just Roundup, okay? What this means is that this is even for organic wines, they said, okay? So what this tells us is that when we spray this around, even over here, it enters the water stream, it enters our soil, and is having real bodily, we could go into it, cancer, a lot of things that goes wrong. And so what are the products that we're spraying around our facility that we wash our hands with, right? Are they good for us? Are they good for our kids? And so all this is creation care. Think about our liturgy. How can we, so one of the exciting things right now that I talk with churches about, from September 1st to October 4th, that's technically the liturgical season of creation. I know that a lot of evangelicals and Nazarenes may not lean into some of these liturgical seasons, some more than others, but that's just a time where some churches do a sermon series or integrate more different responsive readings or different sort of confessions of faith, or read different psalms that reflect more creation-oriented messages and things like that. There's so much there. There's a lectionary called Green Lectionary. It's really great. My friend Derek does it with some other really awesome creation care people. There's so much we can think about. I tell churches to think about creation care as outreach. Think about, man, what good news for a community to see a church engaged in protecting your watershed. Right? If you Google, like, what watershed am I in, and look at that association and look at that list of partners, how cool would it be to see Hendersonville Church of the Nazarene on that list of partners for your local watershed? And for other people to see that and think, whoa, like, Christians care about this? Like, that's kind of what's up, right? There's a whole great book of essays called Watershed Discipleship. And it talks, and there's so many good things. It talks about Flint, but it talks about what it means to be baptized in the watersheds that we live in. There's so much theology there that we really, man, we need to engage in. And so I know we're running out of time, but yeah, there's so much there. Think about it as outreach in our community. Think about liturgically. Think about internally changes we can make. Think about our outdoors facility, tree planting. There's so much there, and so yeah, it's just sparking the imagination. But
well, and you've probably noticed over the last few years we've replaced all the lights here. Everything in here is LED, and if you come to the church on a random day of the week, sometimes you might see Gary Lyde up in his ceiling replacing these fluorescent fixtures as we go. It is expensive to replace them, but it eventually will save us on lots of things. But longevity, better light, other things. But that is just something we were just doing. Not necessarily thinking of environment, but just thinking of, hey, we had really bad lighting here. If y'all remember a few years ago, what it was like, and it was not good electrically either. So there's a lot going on that we do that we're probably already doing some of that. I know we had talked to Caleb last year. Obviously, we've had a lot of changes in the last 12 months. So, but this is something, Pastor Hunter, we had kind of started down the road, but then obviously not. But there are things I think we do that we don't even realize we do. And I think it sounds hard and it sounds expensive, doesn't it, sometimes? But just little simple things, I think, as we go, it just, like, I always feel just a little guilty about all the plastic when he comes. So I'll just let you But I'm going to start carrying a fork, because there is a place that Christy and I go to eat. And one time I had a plastic fork. It's really hard to eat the thing. And we saw some tines missing, and she's still worried that I ate those. So I probably need to carry my own fork around, because, hey, you got your own fork.
Well, they've now found plastic in every human organ in the body, and in our blood, and so microplastics. So, yeah, that's real. That's real. Yeah. We don't think about it every night too. Because I wear a retainer at night, and I put it in, and I'm like, oh Lord, because it's plastic, or whatever, resin or whatever it is, I'm just gonna put that in my mouth for the night. Like, this will be good. Yeah, all the little things, they do add up, and I think we're living in this rare moment where we're finally seeing how all of these things have added up. And that's kind of what's happening. And a lot of these things have felt hidden for a long time, and they're finally kind of being brought out into the light. After 100 plus years of industrialization, kind of without question, it's fine. And obviously, there are a lot of people who have known about this stuff that have lots of money has gone into people not knowing and talking about this stuff. But now with the internet, cat's coming out of the bag. But and honestly, I think that's part of our role too as Christians to be about the, say, apocalyptic work of uncovering and making known and bringing into the light a lot of this stuff. And so that's why I love this conversation and this opportunity just to, I don't get to sit like this enough with wonderful people like you guys. So, yeah, this warms my heart.
Yeah, I mean, we as Christians have always claimed countercultural, but oftenly we go along with culture. And Pastor Hunter, who's a church historian, can tell us that that's been true for the life of the church, because we're made up of human beings that do that kind of stuff. So it's very countercultural, I think, for us to even say that we care about these things. I mean, because I've pointed out to some fellow clergy what's in the Code of Christian Conduct now, and they seem surprised, just because of cultural understanding rather than who we are as a people. And that's one of the reasons we have Caleb come to talk to us, because this is where he lives. This is what he's done. He founded Nazarenes for Creation Care specifically to be able to reach out and remind us who we are and the things that we can do. And like I said, it does feel daunting, but like he said, he's got this list of things if we ever chose to do this as a church. But there's only 3 things, right, you have to do to make it, and we're probably already doing 1.5 of them.
Yeah, we could definitely grandfather something in there, I think. Grandmother it in. Yeah, love it.
Us middle-aged and older people, I think sometimes we give our younger people a hard time, but I actually think they are onto something with this. They are better. They are learning about sensitivities to fragrances, cleaning products, the plastics, and all the things that it does to their body. And I notice that they speak out a lot more on social media platforms, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the younger generations behind us, they have a level of self-awareness that I don't know that we had many people giving us permission to have. You know, I think a big part of the narrative that sort of got us here was tough through it, you know, swim in the mud anyway, you know, and yeah, I think you're right. I think that they kind of get it already to a large degree, yeah.
This really hasn't been mentioned, but I'm just curious, what do you feel about recycling? Because I'm a big recycler. And unfortunately, some cities, you have to pay to have your stuff recycled.
Yeah.
And so some people don't do it. And
Right.
how do you feel about recycling? Like,
Yeah, you know, it's mixed. You know, I think recycling is important. Is it some sort of magic solution? No, you know, but we should do it. But we shouldn't do it if we don't know how to do it. And that's for real. Like, if you don't know how to do it, just don't do it. Because the way it works is when the contractor, whoever we've hired out to do the baling for us, if they send that off they try to sell it. So we recycle stuff, it goes in a bale, that company then tries to sell it to some other company, and if it's too messed up, they can't sell it, okay? So it doesn't get recycled, so then it just gets thrown away in the end. So anyway, it's really sad. You can tour, if you've never toured the recycling facility, it's fun, do it, seriously. It's a great thing to do. Take a youth group, I'm serious. It's a great thing to do. And you learn really quickly if you tour what you can recycle. You know, here in Nashville, it's pretty straightforward, like bottles, jugs, plastic bottles and jugs, some tin can. Like, we don't recycle tons of things, but we do recycle the basics. And anyway, so yeah, do it. But make sure you're doing it right, I would say. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you'd be surprised how much stuff, you know, once you start separating it out. At our house, we have 2 Metro recycle cans and 1 brown can, and I also just have a compost in my backyard, which is just pallets, you know, stacked together. So everything that's organic matter, I'm talking everything from eggshells to my junk mail, go in that compost. And by the time I do that and recycle the things that I can recycle, I almost never have to wheel out my trash. I mean, really though. And obviously we try to be mindful of our you know, what kind of products we're bringing in, but you'd be surprised between just the things we can recycle and things we can compost, that's a big part of our waste.
So I follow a girl named Christina. She opened the store, A Drop in the Ocean. She's out in Oregon, and she does a blog every Monday. It's called Make Waves Monday, where she talks about different hot topic things in the eco-friendly sphere. And one of her big topics that she's done, like she's posted a blog about multiple times, is recycling, specifically textile recycling, because it's gotten really trendy. And she talks about the difference between closed loop recycling and open loop recycling, and how you really have to dig in and find, like, not just how to do the recycling, which is obviously super important, but just like what happens to it once it goes, like once it leaves the recycling facility. You know, like those kinds of things. And it's been super eye-opening for me. She's also done things like during the season where birds migrate, turning off your lights on your front porch, those kinds of things, which can make a huge impact because birds can get led astray. They can fly into the lights, you know, all these kinds of things, and it can make a huge difference. Just little bitty changes like that. So I think that's been a really big resource for me, is to just kind of receive her emails each week.
Yeah, absolutely. Find those people. Like there's so many of them, and just like watch the reels and things, because I think it is these little bits of information that are so interesting to learn. I'll say with the textiles, we use a company called Trashy, and this is for textile, like recycling. And they send you a bag to your house. You fill the bag up, you send it back, and it's a good company as far as I can tell. We've been using them for a while. We don't go through a lot, but when you have little kids, they just wear things out to the point where they're just unredeemable. But yeah. And the other thing I'll say is light pollution. I'm glad you mentioned that. We lose here in the U.S., just in the States, millions, and I do mean millions of birds every year just due to windows and light pollution. And these are things we don't even think about. Obviously, we know how they affect migrating turtles and bats and wallabies and all this other stuff. But light pollution is real pollution, and we could go down that road, but yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
How do you spell trashy?
Oh, gosh, you shouldn't ask me that. I'll look it up for you. Afterward. Yeah. 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 Did you have another question?
Fast food restaurant drive-through that I went to recently. I got a salad, and it was a yummy salad, but in the carrots, little orange carrots, I had 2 shaved pieces of hard plastic the same color of the carrots. They're sharp on both ends.
Oh, my word.
And I found them in my mouth.
You could be rich right now.
I didn't swallow them.
Missed opportunity right now.
I didn't swallow them.
Oh, my word.
But I'm going back there probably tomorrow to
yeah.
talk to the manager.
Wow. Yeah, that's terrifying.
Thump my fist on the counter and all that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a funny, not funny story, but like it just goes to show all this packaging and all this stuff is so enmeshed, and plastic does, and that's the whole thing with the microplastics, how it ends up in our bodies. Because even though we think, oh, this is like durable, it's constantly degrading, especially anytime there's a big temperature change. If you have something in your house, I'll say this, plastic utensils and that sort of thing that are supposed to be better quality, if you wash those, I would encourage you to wash those with cold water, and not put them in the dishwasher and that sort of stuff, because that is where it really breaks down. But anyway.
I'm going back to recycling, sorry.
Yeah.
Sometimes recycling, though, can be like repurposing, but also can help like other things. Like, for example, my grandkids and I, since probably 12 years ago, we've collected tabs off of Coke cans and that type of thing. Yeah. And so about every 3 years, we go to the Ronald McDonald House and we drop them off because they get money for that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So even if it's not, you can still repurpose and recycle for the benefit of others.
That's right.
Yeah. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard of churches that have a whole scrap metal ministry. Mm-hmm. In fact, after I graduated Trevecca, I raised most. So after I graduated Trevecca, I moved to Germany for missions, and I raised most of that money through scrap metal. And so yeah, I mean that's for real. Now the prices are not that good anymore, so burst that bubble. But yeah, I think that there's so much to do there, and I think thinking about it as ministry is huge. Yeah.
And we're about to close, but Chrissy reminded me of something. When you donate clothing, think of the recyclability of some of it. So very important. If you give to Goodwill, and they're an organization that employs people, I worked there at one time, but it's very important that you give stuff that's actually wearable, because if you don't, I'm going to tell you where it ends up. It used to end up in a big baler, and when the dollar was weaker, we could send it to Africa and make $1 million a year when I was there. When the dollar got strong, we couldn't do that, and it went to landfills. But both of them weren't good because it was ending up just in another country in landfill. So if you give something, make sure it's actually wearable. Don't just dump stuff there. Think about other ways to use the textiles if there's some kind of way to recycle. Obviously, the trash heap, that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's right.
So those are just things to remember. I think we forget. It's really easy to, when we throw something away or something tears it, we don't think about it when it's out of our sight anymore. I remember going to the aluminum place. When I was a kid, that's all that anybody recycled because aluminum was huge. But you could go and you could watch it, and it was really cool to watch it all get chopped up and all that stuff. But and get the money.
Yeah, it's really cool if you go to tour the recycling center in Nashville. They take aluminum cans, and they're not magnetic, but they still separate them with magnets. They give them just a little. They give them a little charge. They spark them somehow, just brief enough for them to become magnetic, and then they suck them off the conveyor belt. That's really cool. I'm telling you, tour it. I think that's a good point, and I think one of the other, I'll say last things, I encourage churches to do is think about, if you have these church buildings, if there's an empty room somewhere, think about creating a space for your community that's sort of a second use area. There's a really great nonprofit in Nashville called Turnip Green, and the whole business model, it's a nonprofit, but the whole business model is that they have all of the stuff that Goodwill doesn't take, which is lots of stuff. And so it's labeled as a creative reuse store, but you go in and it could be fabrics or anything. I mean, you should just visit. And you just pay whatever you want. You get whatever you want, and then you donate whatever you want, and you walk out. And I'm thinking wow, churches could do this. You know what I'm saying? We have the space for it. There's so much stuff in our communities that are just hitting the landfills that don't need to be. So what would it look like to create sanctuary for some of these material items and belongings in our community and kind of have fun with it? But anyway.
Yeah, awesome. So Nazarenes for Creation Care, stop by the table. There's a couple books left, but there's also all kinds of other information. Yep. Obviously, the Creation Care Summit coming up in October. Yeah. And other ways to be engaged throughout the year. Okay, you have a podcast, correct?
I have a podcast. It's called the Eco Christian Podcast that I have a lot of fun with. It's not just Nazarene, but I talk with all sorts of people, and so it's a lot of fun.
And so, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Yeah, man, this is great.
And I'm going to ask you to close us in prayer, please,
I'd love
if you would.
I'd love to. God, thank you so much for the gift of this evening and getting to hang out with these beautiful people and talk about your creation and our part in it, as we are also your creation, God. And we are just so thankful for it, God, and thankful for how forgiving your creation is, that you created it this way. And we see time and time again, if we will just protect it, if we will just be your servants and keepers of this garden, God, that, all flourishing occurs, and that is just so encouraging, God. And we just give you thanks for this night and this popcorn we have consumed, and ask that you be this as we leave this place. Amen.